My name is Danielle Atwood, and I am 32 years old. Last Sunday evening, my mother-in-law pushed a manila envelope across the dinner table and said in a voice like ice, "You need to see what's inside." It was a DNA test, run on my 3-year-old daughter without my knowledge. She thought this envelope would blow my marriage apart. What she didn't realize was that I had already found out about the test 2 full weeks before that dinner. And what I did during those 14 days changed everything that followed. But none of it will make sense unless you understand who Patricia Atwood really is. She never simply talked to people, she cataloged them. Every phrase, every gesture, every crack in someone's composure got filed away for later use. From the very first time I stood in front of her, I understood one thing clearly. She would never truly welcome me into her family. Not in this lifetime. The day we met, when I was 25, she didn't reach out to embrace me. Instead, her eyes moved over me like she was inspecting paperwork for errors. "What line of work are your parents in?" she asked. "And your father, what became of him?" Every reply I gave went straight into her private archive. Mark told me afterward, "She approves of you, I can tell." I already knew better. She wasn't approving of anything. She was gathering evidence for a case she hadn't yet decided to file. Once we married, she folded herself into our household as though she'd always owned a share of it. She dropped in without warning, reorganized our kitchen shelves, and delivered judgment wrapped in the language of concern. Her smile never wavered, calm, calculating, watchful. Most of all when her gaze landed on my daughter. Lily arrived healthy and whole, and to me, flawless. But Patricia zeroed in on one detail, the deep red of her hair. It became something she couldn't let go of. "Strange," she'd murmur at every gathering. "No one in the Atwood line has ever carried that color." She repeated it until suspicion seeped through the family like a slow leak nobody could quite locate. I stayed quiet. I watched. As an occupational therapist, I've learned that behavior always tells the truth. Eventually, patterns don't lie, even when people do. Small things started stacking up, a sippy cup that vanished and reappeared oddly, a sealed plastic bag hidden away, an envelope glimpsed once on her desk. None of it made sense alone, but together they told me I was being observed. And worse, so was my little girl. Then my phone rang. A woman from Geneva Labs informed me that a paternity test had been filed under my daughter's name. "I never gave permission for that," I told her. Stunned, she paused before answering. The request came from the child's grandmother. That single sentence changed the entire shape of the situation, because what Patricia had done wasn't just cruel, it was against the law. I phoned an attorney that same afternoon, a woman named Rachel Nguyen. Her advice was short. Stay silent, change nothing, let her expose herself. So that's exactly what I did. For 2 weeks, I moved through my life like nothing had happened. I made dinner, I went to work, I smiled at family gatherings. Underneath all of it, I was quietly assembling a case, dates, conversations, a clear timeline because I understood now that Patricia wasn't simply testing my daughter's DNA. She was building toward a public execution of my marriage. I found out her plan by accident, overhearing her daughter Courtney on a phone call. "Mom's going to lay it all out at Sunday dinner." My stomach dropped. That was the moment. A staged reveal in front of the whole family, meant to be the final blow. Sunday came. The table was set, the family assembled, and Patricia sat unnervingly composed. Like someone rehearsing a verdict, she was certain she'd already won. The envelope waited beside her plate like a loaded weapon. Once the meal ended, she rose. "Before we have dessert, there's something you all need to hear." The room went still. She walked toward me, envelope in hand, and looked directly at me, not at her son, not at anyone else. "This child doesn't resemble an Atwood at all," she said. "I think it's time Mark knew the truth." She handed him the papers. Mark read the first page, then the second, and stopped cold. Nobody breathed. Finally, he looked up. "She's my daughter," he said. 99.9998%. No doubt left, no argument, nothing to question. Patricia's expression cracked. This wasn't the outcome she had scripted. That's when I finally spoke, steady and quiet. I found out about this test 2 weeks ago. Her face shifted the moment she understood. I had known the whole time, and I had let her walk straight into her own trap. You ordered a DNA test on a minor without parental consent, I said. That's a crime. The table went silent, but I wasn't finished yet. There's something else in that report. Mark turned to the next page and froze again. A second name was listed, James M., age 36, flagged as a half-uncle match. Confusion rippled around the table. Someone whispered, "What does that even mean?" Mark turned to his mother. "Who is James?" And that's when Patricia finally broke, not with her usual calculation, but for the first time, with raw honesty. "I had a child," she admitted, "long before you were ever born." The room went completely silent. A secret she'd buried for 36 years had just surfaced in front of everyone. The very man she'd spent years warning us against turned out to be her own son. The truth she'd tried to use as a weapon against me had turned around and shattered her instead. But the real revelation wasn't about paternity at all. It was that Patricia had spent years projecting her own hidden past onto my daughter. Her fear had worn the mask of control. Her shame had disguised itself as protection. Dinner didn't just end, it fell apart. Chairs scraped back one after another until the room emptied out entirely, like everyone was fleeing a ship that had started to sink. That night, Mark took my hand and said quietly, "You knew, and you let it play out." I told him, "I didn't cause this, I just let the truth do what it needed to do." In the weeks that followed, our family slowly began to rebuild. Imperfect, but honest for the first time in years, a brother none of us knew existed was found living in another state. A father learned what silence had cost him, and a woman who had controlled everyone around her finally lost the grip she never should have had in the first place. As for Patricia, she stopped dyeing her hair. The truth she had spent decades trying to bury had been sitting in plain sight all along. If there's one thing I carry from all of this, it's this. The people who work hardest to expose you are usually running from something they can't face in themselves, and sometimes the very weapon aimed at destroying you ends up being the thing that finally sets you free.